ever wonder why or how you ended up in all those places, just kind of, by accident? You just happened to end up in these times that stuff was just exploding all around you.
A lot of it was accident, yeah. I mean, it was accident that we went down to South and, just at a time, just before the Civil Rights Movement exploded. In 1956, I was about to get my PhD from Columbia. I finished my coursework, and I was open for work, especially since I had a wife and 2 kids, and looking for a teaching job, and I'd never heard of Spelman College. I hadn't even thought about black colleges. In fact, I had sort of told the placement bureau that I would teach anywhere except the South. But they said, this is different, you might be interested in black college, etc. So I met with the president in New York, and he hired me to be chair of the History and Social Science Department at Spelman College. When we got there, things were very quiet and very subdued, and you couldn't tell that anything was going to happen in the South. I didn't come down there to lead in a social movement. I came down there to teach and to learn something about the South. And so I wasn't saying to my students, let's go out there and break the barriers of segregation, and you all get arrested. No, I wasn't doing that. But, I wasn't a totally passive creature either. That is, when, you might say that through some kind of dialogue between me and my students, we made sort of decisions about, oh, well, here we have a social science club. What do we do for a project? Well, how about tackling racial segregation?
I came to Spelman in '61. The Atlanta movement was really going pretty strong, and I was very excited, and of course joined, demonstrations. And part of what made it possible to do that was that he was with us. He was with the students.
We were in a crisis in the South. We were in a conflict. We needed every bit of energy we could get. And I saw the college campus as a place where there's a huge amount of intellectual energy and human energy, and I didn't want it to be wasted. So from that point on, I began to see the resources of a university, of a college, as something that should not be wasted in merely academic pursuits.
I never hesitated to go and take students outside in interracial settings to help challenge, whether it's the public library or the state legislature, the segregated seating or the theater. But he was constantly, again, pushing to say this is not right, and we will challenge that is not right.
We have learned something these past few years about the inadequacy of our regular political structure to bring about desirable social change in a situation of urgency. When people turn in desperation to marches and parades, picketing, sit-ins, mass meetings, and freedom rides, this suggests that the normal channels of government are inadequate for the expression of their grievances, and that the mechanism for solution is rusty.
He really captured the essence of, of kind of the revolutionary spirit embodied in a professor of history. And that is really quite unique, I think.
His capacity for moral outrage, which is in much deficit today, was again a thing that has throughout fed my spirit, feeds my spirit now. I don't understand how there aren't more people who are just profoundly upset at the racial injustice, at the economic injustice, and having Howard Zinn affirm one's own instincts was an enormously important thing for me as a young black girl growing up in the South at that time, who had a deep yearning to be free and to challenge the status quo. So did he.
And also, of course, in Atlanta, you would never hear any person, black, white, or whatever, expressing the thoughts that he did.
And from then on, things were never the same. They weren't never the same in the city of Atlanta. They were never the same for Spelman College, because Spelman College, which had been such a sedate place, such a controlled place, so conservative, so careful, And now these students were just humming and seething, and their long pent-up indignation at their own lives and their parents' lives, which had been very neatly suppressed in the atmosphere of this college, on a supposition that no, they'd better keep quiet and just learn their lessons and become important people in the black community. That was all over now. And now they were going to be participants in history.
The Southern intellectuals were very supportive of our version of apartheid. I mean, they didn't object to it. Either they kept quiet, either they openly supported it, or they kept quiet.
His activism was not at all loved by anybody, hardly. I mean, maybe one or two teachers.
When the students came back to the campus after being in jail, after protesting, and then rebelled against the restrictions on campus, against the way they were treated, the way they were patronized by the college administration, and I supported them in that internal struggle, that was too much.
He was fired, after all, from Spelman.
This guy is bounced out of Spelman College in the most traumatic imaginable circumstances. The Spelman administration waits until after the students have all left campus. That was the key. And then just axed him.
Certainly the FBI was already putting me on their list. The FBI had taken notice of me in 1962 when I delivered a report on the situation in Albany, Georgia, for the Southern Regional Council, report which made the front page of the New York Times, in which my report criticized the FBI and the Justice Department and the federal government for not defending the constitutional rights of black people. And Martin Luther King, asked about this, said, yes, I was right, that the FBI was really supporting racism in the South. And the FBI took note of my report, and in fact it was one of the first times they really took note of King as hostile to the FBI. So, did the FBI intercede? Did they do anything? Did they talk to the trustees? I have no way of knowing.
This is my favorite place here. It's Dunkin' Donuts, but because it's Harvard, they don't want to call themselves Dunkin' Donuts openly, so they call themselves the Elliott Street Cafe. But if you look closely inside, it's Dunkin' Donuts. It's really funny. But I come here all the time. I meet people here all the time because I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I wrote 2 books about the South, actually, and I'd been started to write articles about what was happening in the South around me. Living in the black community, the swirl of events, the civil rights movement beginning to develop, and so even before the sit-ins. And I wrote an article for Harper's Magazine, began writing for The Nation. Then Beacon Press, which is a publisher in Boston, asked if I would write a history about the NAACP and the Southern movement. And I wrote back to them and I said, you don't understand. The NAACP is not the heart of the Southern movement. The heart of the Southern movement is SNCC, this unknown group of young people. And so, okay, I wrote a book about SNCC.